Hey everybody, and welcome to another segment of AstrologyAnswers.com's weekly forecast. My name is Terence. The week begins on Monday, August the 26th, 2024. The following Monday, September the 2nd, is a new moon. And you hear me mention this once a month. When you're in the last week before the next new moon, it is when the last new moon energies, which would have been the beginning of August, it's this wrapping up, bringing closure, winding down what was set in motion with the last new moon. And the last week of the 4-week new moon cycle is that wrapping up and winding down. So in general, you don't want to be initiating major new projects when the energy is winding down, and you don't want to start a project where you're trying to get all wound up, so you'll be swimming against the current. Plus, Mercury is retrograde, but goes direct on August the 28th. But you don't want to start anything right away. In fact, you'll often hear when Mercury goes direct, give it 2 weeks, called the shadow period. So when Mercury, that can rule the mind, our decision-making faculties, is no longer moving really slow and sluggish, but it's back to speed. But let's start with Monday, August the 26th. The moon that sets the public tone is in Gemini. When the moon's in Gemini, people are talking more, networking more, just running around. This is a lot of mental busyness, a lot of mental curiosity. In the evening, even the early evening, Pacific time on Monday, pleasure-seeking Venus, romantic Venus, will be in harmony with innovative, surprising Uranus. So this Monday evening, especially on the west coast of the United States, maybe it's still early enough, maybe around 8, 9 for the East Coast, the Venus in harmony with Uranus is really favorable for attending a gathering of friends, a party, maybe going on a romantic date. But Venus can represent entertainment, so you could really enjoy yourself. Attending a film, a theater, a concert. Now, on Tuesday, the moon continues in restless, curious Gemini, nervous Gemini, but it's in harmony with Mercury mid-morning around 10, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Mercury, communication Mercury, that's retrograde, is the ruling planet for Gemini. So everything that Gemini represents, so does Mercury, because Geminis can be walking and talking and chewing gum at the same time, and Mercury is all this brainstorming and restlessness. But the moon, the emotional tone's in harmony with Mercury mid-morning, but the Mercury's in retrograde. So that could be really favorable for kind of resolving miscommunications, that had gone awry earlier, previously with the Mercury in retrograde. So it's going to be good for getting back on track. The moon in Gemini by 5, 6 p.m. Pacific time will be crossing over Mars. Mars, warrior, impatient, ambitious Mars, is a 2-year cycle, and it's now in Gemini. And so the moon in Gemini crossing over Mars, that could be a lot of emotional passion, excitement on the positive. Could even be some irritability, some stress and tension, more on the negative side. If you're finding yourself being really anxious and stressed out, I always advise, go take a walk, breathe, meditate, get the energy out of the body. But on Wednesday, the 28th, decision-making, communication, Mercury goes direct. Now, that's a very powerful day because it's releasing all the pent-up energy, stuck energy with information communication since it went retrograde on August the 4th. But you don't want to, the way I like to explain it, but you don't want to go, okay, Mercury's direct, now I can make all these important decisions. Well, no. Because when Mercury goes direct, it's starting to release a lot of pent-up energy, but it's going very slow. So think of Mercury, the mind, the mental faculties. It's still very slow, sluggish. So you're not feeling as sharp and as quick. And it could take a week to 2 weeks to get back up to its regular speed. Plus, we're in the last week of the previous new moon cycle, because the next new moon is not till this Monday. And the moon on Wednesday is in Cancer. Cancer is very reflective, nurturing, emotional energy. And Venus, relational Venus, will be in opposition or at odds or confrontation with Neptune. When Mercury goes direct, it could be testing relationships. And Venus, the planet of relationships, in opposition to Neptune, there could be this disappointments, this confusion, these misunderstandings. So even though Mercury is going direct, be very careful about making assumptions, and still communications can go awry because relational Venus will be at odds with deceptive sometimes but confusing Neptune. On Thursday, the 29th, the moon in emotional, nurturing Cancer will be in harmony with grounding Saturn, business Saturn, from about 9:10 a.m. Pacific time. So that Thursday morning Pacific time is very favorable for business, for preparing a business day, getting yourself organized. And Venus is where on Wednesday it was at odds with nebulous, confusing Neptune. Now the Venus is in a trine, the best flow of energy, to Pluto. That could be a day when you are probing deeply Pluto of what went awry with the Venus opposite Neptune. And it could be, instead of feeling lost and confused with the Venus-Neptune, now the next day, you're ready to have a really deep, heartfelt conversation. And now Mercury, it's still sluggish, but it's no longer blocked. It's starting to move forwards. Now, Friday, the moon, continuing in reflective emotional Cancer, will be in harmony with inspiring, compassionate Neptune, because it's in the positive, mid-morning Pacific time, at which point at 10:10 a.m. Pacific time, the moon leaves emotional, nurturing Cancer and goes into extroverted, theatrical, romantic Leo at 10:10 a.m. Pacific time. And by 1:12 in early afternoon Pacific time, now the moon, which has just recently went into outgoing, dynamic Leo, will be in harmony with pleasure-seeking relational Venus. So there's all this Wednesday, Venus, Neptune, Thursday, Venus, trine, Pluto, Friday, now moon is in romantic Leo, in harmony with Venus early afternoon, Pacific time. So I think there's a lot of readjusting as Mercury is trying to catch back up to speed and kind of resolve any mishaps and misunderstandings in relationships. And we're going into Friday evening, and for the weekend with moon in Leo. And this is really great energy to celebrate, to entertain, to have some romance. On Saturday, the 31st, the moon is in Leo all day. There's no other planetary events, so it's relatively calmer energies. But the Leo, want to get out and about, little romance, a lot of fun. On Sunday, September the 1st, the moon is in Leo, but will go into analytical, sensible, working Virgo at 8:49 p.m. Pacific time. And then few hours later, going into Monday, the moon will cross the sun, and now we have the new moon, and we're starting a new cycle where we're setting our intentions on new priorities. But Uranus is that planet of liberation and rebellion, and it's going retrograde at 27 Taurus. And so if you have any planets in a hard angle, even a soft angle, because the soft is better, easier, around 27 degrees of Taurus or 27 degrees of Scorpio or Virgo or Aquarius, etc., that Uranus going retrograde, you might be feeling a certain jolt. And then we're setting up for the new moon, and that can also be, now because of what any kind of maybe some unexpected surprises was happening. Now with the new moon, it's time to get down to work and resolve any of these issues. And Mercury is catching up to speed, and you're having more clarity. I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you next week with my next segment. Until then, be safe and well.